Sam Wiseman, who was a professor of chemistry at Manchester University, founded the Manchester School of Zionism, which was in Cheetham Hill, Manchester. And the editor of the Guardian newspaper, and the owner of the Guardian newspaper, C.P. Scott, took up the cause of Zionism in 1913-1914 and introduced Chaim Weizmann to David Lloyd George, who was at the time War Minister, and the Liberal government, and later coalition government, that was in power during the First World War, took up the cause of Zionism because, of course, Britain liberated the Ottoman Empire, liberated the Arabs, indeed, who were not equals in the Ottoman Empire, and liberated the Jews and the Christians from the Ottoman the Ottoman Empire's rule, which had lasted 400 years. The history of Zionism, in fact, goes back to the Holy Bible. Because who was the first Zionist? It was God. God was the first Zionist. You can read it in the Old Testament, the Holy Bible, whatever you want to call it. He chose Jerusalem for David to go to. So he made Israel the land of the Jewish people, and he made Jerusalem the capital of the Jewish nation. The only nation that has ever had Jerusalem as its capital is either the United Kingdom of Israel and Judea under King David, or the current state of Israel. No other nation has had Jerusalem as its capital city. And Jerusalem was made the capital city in 1950. It was temporarily Tel Aviv for 3 years. The Arabs invaded. The Arabs' invasions of the Middle East were in the 7th century AD. In 638, the Arab armies invaded Israel, in fact with a bit of help from the Jews there because they were disagreeing with the other people who owned them. Israel was called Palestine. Palestine was the name that the Romans gave to Judea in the year 135 AD after the second Jewish revolt. You can read about it, it's in the history books. There were 2 Jewish revolts, and 70 AD and 135 AD, against the Romans. And the second Jewish revolt, the Emperor Hadrian, who built Hadrian's Wall in Scotland, decided he wanted to eradicate all evidence of Judaism in Jerusalem, and renamed the province of Judea, which was in fact a colony of the Roman Empire, Palestine, or Philistina, which is named after the Greek Sea people who were the opponents of the Israelis and King David in the Holy Bible. They were not Arabs, they were Greeks. They have no history beyond ancient times, because the only ancient country left in the Middle East with an ancient culture today is Israel. Everybody else's culture disappeared with the Arab invasions of the 7th century. Those cultures were wiped out and destroyed. Now, it's important. Palestine is the name of a colony. It is not the name of a nation. It was a Roman name for Judea, nothing else. It was an insult at the Jews, that's all. And it remained Palestine, but after the Muslim conquest, the Arabs never called it Palestine, because it was part of the Caliphate. And the Ottomans never called it Palestine. It was the British in the 19th century that brought back the name Palestine when the Zionist Anglicans in the 19th century decided to champion the cause of the Jews again, to return persecuted Jews of Europe back into the Middle East. Not that the Jews ever left the Middle East. There were Jews and have been Jews in the land of Israel and the land of Palestine temporarily all the time. And same as until the 1950s, there were 200,000 Jews in Baghdad, formerly Babylon. And they'd been there much, much longer than the Arabs. They were there from the time of the Byzantine Empire. And they were kicked out by the government of Iraq, along with the 800,000 other Jews who were kicked out of lands of the Middle East, out of Muslim countries. These Jews had their property stolen by the governments concerned. These Jews were robbed by the Muslim governments, and these Muslim governments, the Jews longer than the Muslims. The Jews were there for 2,000 years. They were in all these nations longer than anybody connected with the Caliphate. The Caliphate was an imperialist Arab empire, just like the British Empire. All empires are the same. And the Caliphate was no different. The Jews are the indigenous people of the Middle East. Just as